My husband died on a Tuesday, and I wore black more out of habit than grief. At 66, I should have felt devastation. Instead, I felt relief. And that guilt me more than any priest's sermon could. I had buried Jonathan Moore in the same church where we were married 42 years earlier. The stained glass windows looked just as colorful, but everything else had dulled. I stood near his casket like an exhibit, the loyal widow. The pity in people's eyes pressed down on my bones. But the real shock didn't come from the eulogy. It came from the fifth row, where 5 unfamiliar women sat in a tight cluster. Not crying, not whispering, just watching. One of them, a tall redhead with deep wrinkles and piercing eyes, held a single white rose in her lap. Another, younger, maybe in her 40s, stood near the door, sunglasses on despite the cloudy sky. I noticed the second woman staring at me longer than most. Her eyes didn't say, "I'm sorry." They said, "You don't know, do you?" I didn't. The first woman approached me at the cemetery, her hand cold on mine. "I'm Clara," she said. "I'm so sorry." Jonathan, he was my husband, too. I blinked. Thought maybe she was confused. "You mean, you knew him? Worked with him?" "No," she said softly. "I married him. 19 years ago. In Chicago. I have the papers." Another woman stepped forward, June. She said her name was. "Retired librarian. We thought you should know." You weren't the only one. One by one, they introduced themselves. 5 women. 5 versions of the same lie. Married. Promised. Betrayed. I thought I was the widow. Turns out, I was just one of many. They invited me to a cafe the next morning. I almost didn't go. I thought maybe they were delusional or desperate. But something inside me needed answers. Needed to know that my years weren't just wasted, they were stolen. We sat at a round table in the back. I noticed how none of us ordered food. Just coffee. Bitterness in a cup. Clara pulled out a folder. Photos. Marriage licenses. Bank statements. The evidence piled like dirt on a fresh grave. June had made a timeline. He kept rotating between us, she explained, pointing to flight records. 3 to 6 months at a time. Enough to keep the lies manageable. Each of us thought he traveled for business. Marisol, the nurse, looked down. He said he was opening clinics in low-income countries. I gave him my savings to help. It was never real. Dana, the quiet one, pushed a USB drive across the table. "I followed him for 8 months," she said. "I knew he was cheating. I just didn't know. There were 5 of us. Then there was Sophie. She looked too calm, too untouched by the storm. He was my fiancé," she said, removing her sunglasses. "We were supposed to get married next month." A silence fell. I stared at her youthful face, barely 40, I guessed. I didn't say it out loud, but I wondered what Jonathan, my gray-haired, cholesterol-clogged husband, was doing with a woman who looked like she still got carded at bars. "Did he tell you about us?" I finally asked. "No," she said, sipping her drink. "But I found out. And I didn't leave. I wanted to see how far it went. That should have been my first warning." We agreed to meet again. Not for closure, but for revenge. We weren't grieving widows anymore. We were partners in a mission. Because Jonathan Moore didn't just cheat on us. He built a castle of lies, stole our money, our years, our lives. And now we were going to tear it down. Together. We met again the following Sunday in Clara's home, an old Victorian townhouse that smelled like old roses and stronger women. It felt strange to be inside another widow's space, sipping tea while dissecting the wreckage of the man we all thought we knew. But grief has a funny way of turning strangers into sisters. Clara had a war room. That's the only way I can describe it. Her study was covered with printouts, bank records, maps, dates, even passport copies of Jonathan under different aliases. One showed him as James Latimer. Another, Douglas Kane. I couldn't breathe when I saw them. He'd used those names while I lay beside him, asking how his day had been. He wasn't just a cheater, Clara said, tapping the board. He was a con man. A career fraud. And we were his supply. Marisol stood silently near the fireplace. Her hands trembled around her teacup. He stole $126,000 from me. I thought I was helping him fund a community clinic in Ecuador. That was the dream. Dana spoke next, eyes scanning every corner of the room like she was trained to. He never used his real name on anything valuable. Always shell companies, dummy accounts. He kept us isolated, deliberately, so none of us would ever find the others. And still, I couldn't stop staring at Sophie. She sat at the edge of the room, legs crossed, like she belonged there, but didn't. She hadn't spoken a word all afternoon, just listened, smiled faintly, and nodded. When Clara asked her how much she'd lost, she simply said, "Not much." Something about her answer left a bitter taste in my mouth. June broke the silence. What if we work together? Pool what we know. We track what's left of his empire and take it back. I'm in, Dana said quickly. We hit him where it hurts, even if he's dead. I want justice, I said softly. For every time he made me feel stupid for asking questions. For every lie he fed me while I was spooning soup into his mouth during his last stroke. I want my money, Marisol added. And I want people to know what he really was. Clara nodded. Then we make a pact. We put our hands in, 5 of us. But Sophie hesitated. I'm not sure this is wise, she finally said. Digging into a dead man's secrets? What if we stir up things that can't be undone? Dana's voice cut like glass. That's the point. Sophie eventually joined us. Hesitant. Reserved. Her hand didn't stay in the circle long, and that memory would haunt me later. But at the time, I chalked it up to fear. By the end of the night, we had roles. Dana would dig into financials. Clara would handle legal records and will copies. June would keep the master timeline. Marisol would use her clinic connections to track down any aliases used for medical coverage. And I had something none of them did. Jonathan's original hard drives. He'd been sloppy near the end. Illness made him slow, forgetful. He left things unsecured. Passwords written in a desk drawer. Flash drives in drawers he thought I never opened. I took them all after the funeral. Maybe I knew. Deep down, maybe I always knew. Back home that night, I sat at the dining table where Jonathan used to read the paper every morning and complain about liberal conspiracies. I plugged in one of the drives. The folders were oddly named invoices, gifts, recipes. Inside were photos of bank statements, property deeds, even scanned passports. Fake ones. Then a folder titled Us. I clicked. Dozens of photos. Him and Sophie. Her as a teenager. Her in a graduation gown. Her on the beach with Jonathan's arm around her. It wasn't just a relationship. She was his child. I didn't sleep that night. The photo of Jonathan with his arm around Sophie burned into my mind like a brand. He was holding her the way a father holds a daughter, not the way a man holds a fiancé. The more I studied the folder, the clearer it became he hadn't just promised to marry Sophie. He had raised her. And I had no idea she existed. The timestamps on the photos went back 27 years. Sophie as a baby, held by a much younger Jonathan. Sophie on Christmas morning, grinning by a crooked tree. Sophie with scraped knees and a popsicle. Sophie growing up. Always him beside her. Never a mother in sight. My stomach turned. He must have raised her in secret, parallel to our life. A separate family. A separate world. And now she was here, woven into our web of widows, pretending to be one of us. But why? What was she after? Was she here to protect his legacy, or to bury it? I didn't tell the others. Not yet. Not because I wanted to protect Sophie, but because I wasn't ready to believe it. Because if I said it out loud, then Jonathan hadn't just lied to me. He had built his entire life around deception. Even his death felt like an escape. Instead, I copied the entire folder onto my own drive and locked it away. The next day, we met again. This time at Marisol's apartment, above the flower shop she once co-owned with Jonathan. Another illusion. Dana had uncovered a string of offshore transfers. He moved money through Belize, the Caymans, even Singapore, she said, clicking through slides on her laptop. Always just below reporting thresholds. Always to companies that only existed on paper. Clara added, one of those shell companies owns a condo in Costa Rica. Beachfront. Paid in cash 10 years ago. June shuffled through her notes. He told me he was going there for prostate treatment. I thought it was strange. I remember thinking, who gets medical treatment surrounded by margaritas and palm trees? Marisol said nothing, just stared into her coffee. I noticed the dark circles under her eyes. Grief was turning into shame for all of us. Then Sophie arrived. Late this time. She looked calm. Too calm. She placed a small tin on the table and opened it. Letters, she said. From him. To me. In case he died. The room froze. Clara reached for one. Sophie let her. I debated burning them, Sophie said, sitting down. But if we're going to do this together, you should know what he thought about each of you. Marisol's hand trembled as she pulled out an envelope with her name on it. There was one for me, too. I opened it slowly. Recognized his handwriting immediately. The curve of the E. The way he always dotted his I's like raindrops. It read, Eleanor, you were my first. My anchor. My safest lie. You always believed the best in me, even when I didn't deserve it. I kept you separate because I couldn't bear the thought of losing your trust. If you're reading this, I'm already gone. And I know I've left more destruction than love. But please know, there was a part of me that truly loved you. Just not the whole part. Forgive me if you can. Jay, my hand shook. The others sat in stunned silence, reading their own letters. Words soaked in guilt, charm, and manipulation. Then Sophie spoke again. I know you don't trust me. And I don't blame you. But he wasn't just my father. He was my controller. He raised me to believe this was normal, lying, stealing, masking truth as strategy. But I want out. I want to destroy everything he built. She looked at me then, straight in the eye. Her voice didn't waver. And I want your help to do it. I wanted to scream, to throw the letter at her. But I didn't. Because part of me believed her. And another part wanted to see just how far she'd go before slipping. We ended the meeting with one goal: access the Costa Rican property. If we could unlock it, we could trace the funds connected to all the other shell companies. Dana was booking flights. Clara was digging into the alias used for the deed. Marisol was coordinating with a contact from a former patient down there. And me? I was watching Sophie. Not as a teammate anymore, but as a threat. It took us less than a week to arrange the trip, but every hour felt like a month. I hadn't left the country in 20 years. Not since Jonathan and I went to Rome on our 20th anniversary. Back then, I believed every lie he whispered over candlelight pasta. Now, I was flying with 4 women I barely knew, chasing the remains of a man I wished I'd never loved. We landed in Costa Rica under gray skies. It was supposed to be paradise, but all I could think about was what he had hidden in that condo and whether his secrets had outlived him. The condo sat alone on a stretch of private coastline, shielded by palm trees and guarded by silence. The building was pristine, its white walls gleaming against the stormy horizon. The concierge had no trouble letting us in after Clara presented the alias paperwork. Apparently, Douglas Kane had paid the staff generously to stay out of his business. We entered the unit slowly, one by one. The air was stale. Curtains drawn. The fridge was unplugged, and dust clung to everything. It looked untouched, but not abandoned. Dana checked the closets. June took photos of the framed art on the wall, cheap, generic, but hiding something beneath. Clara discovered a safe in the bedroom closet, hidden behind a false panel. And Sophie, she wandered into the study. I followed her, silent as a shadow. The room had a large mahogany desk, a wall of bookshelves, and a single photo frame on the desk. It was a picture of Jonathan holding Sophie as a baby. Funny, I said, startling her. He never displayed a photo of me, not even on our nightstand. She turned slowly. He kept his lives separate. I only saw photos of you when I broke into his files after he died. I stepped closer. How long have you known about us? About the other women. Her eyes softened, but only for a second. Since I was 15. A jolt ran through me. So you knew, and said nothing? I was a child, Eleanor, she said, voice rising. He raised me to keep secrets, to look the other way. And when I got older, I became good at it. I studied her face. Then why help us now? She hesitated. Because I don't want to be like him. Before I could respond, Dana called out from the other room. We found something. We all gathered in the master bedroom. The safe was open, and inside were documents, more fake IDs, account keys, unregistered deeds, and a thick manila folder labeled simply, failsafe. Inside was a printed copy of a will. Not the one Jonathan left back in the U.S. This one was handwritten, unfiled, and signed. And it changed everything. To whom it may concern, if anything happens to me, know this. I've left something behind. Something that can't be traced by lawyers or accountants. Something that proves I never died. Don't look for it unless you're ready to face everything I've done. June dropped the folder. What does that mean? She whispered. Clara's voice was low. It means he planned this. All of it. The death. The funeral. Maybe even us finding each other. My heart pounded. You think he faked his death? Marisol's eyes were wide. The hotel where he died. I was never allowed to see the body. They said it was too traumatic. Dana clenched her jaw. What if it wasn't his body at all? Then Sophie said something that silenced us all. There's one more room. We turned to her. She pointed to the hallway. Behind the pantry. I remember it. He used to lock it when I visited. Said it was his escape room. I always thought it was just where he watched sports in peace. We rushed to the pantry. Moved shelves aside. Behind a false wooden panel was a heavy door, thicker than the others. It had a biometric scanner. Sophie knelt beside it, examining the edges. This is military grade, she murmured. This isn't a sports den. Clara touched the scanner. There's no way in without his fingerprint. Sophie stood. Then we find another way. And suddenly I understood. This wasn't just about stolen money anymore. This was about finding the truth. And maybe, just maybe, Jonathan Moore wasn't dead. The storm hit that night, wild, relentless, and loud. Lightning split the sky every few minutes, illuminating the coastline like a warning. Inside the condo, the mood was no less electric. We stood in the narrow hallway, staring at the biometric door. A fingerprint scanner. No keyhole. No access panel. No obvious weakness. Jonathan had protected whatever was behind it like a dragon guard's gold. Dana leaned in, her flashlight dancing over the scanner. This is high-end, she murmured. Not just for keeping out nosy guests. This is designed to outlast break-ins, fire, even power outages. I stood back, arms folded tightly over my chest. Then what's he hiding behind it? More cash? His real will? Or something else? Sophie tilted her head, eyes narrowed. He used to disappear for hours when I visited. Said he was meditating, but I always heard, humming. A low vibration. A generator? June guessed. Or surveillance equipment, Dana muttered. Let me sweep the rest of this place. She disappeared down the hallway with a black light and handheld scanner. The rest of us lingered in tense silence, each of us unwilling to admit what we were starting to believe. Jonathan might still be alive. And we were standing inside the center of his web. 30 minutes later, Dana returned. There are hidden cameras in every room, she said grimly. I found 3 in the kitchen. 1 in the study. 2 in the bedroom. All linked to a remote transmitter, powered separately. That means someone's been watching. Clara's face went pale. You mean, someone saw us open the safe? Dana nodded. My breath caught in my throat. And if they saw that, they know we found the folder. The room went cold despite the tropical heat. We have to leave, June said, voice shaking. This isn't just about revenge anymore. We could be in danger. No, Sophie said. We're in this now. If he's alive, we find him. If he's dead, we find out who's protecting his secrets. I turned to her. And why should we trust you? You knew about the cameras, didn't you? Her eyes flared for a second, something like hurt, something like rage, but she didn't answer. Instead, she walked past me, straight to the biometric lock. If anyone's fingerprint might still work, she said, it's mine. She pressed her thumb to the scanner. For one painful second, nothing happened. Then, a soft beep. The light turned green. The lock hissed. And the door opened. We stared into the dark passage behind it. A narrow stairwell descended into a dimly lit basement. Sophie looked back at us. He used to call this place his vault. My stomach twisted. We stepped inside. The stairwell smelled of metal and dust. the kind that coats secrets no one wants to be found. At the bottom was a wide room filled with filing cabinets, digital servers, and one enormous desk with 6 screens. Every screen was blank, until one blinked on. Static, then a video feed. Not from the condo, from another room. A room none of us recognized. But sitting in a chair, his legs crossed casually, was Jonathan Moore. Alive, breathing, smiling, and watching us. None of us spoke. The air in the basement felt strangled, like it had been holding its breath for years and finally exhaled the worst truth imaginable. Jonathan was alive. He sat on the screen in a gray chair, wearing the same smug expression I had seen too many times in life, an expression that made apologies feel hollow and truths feel suspicious. He looked healthier than he had in months before the heart attack. Thinner, but alert. His fingers tapped slowly on the armrest, as if waiting for us to scream. "I hope you enjoyed the funeral," he said finally, his voice crackling through hidden speakers in the ceiling. I spared no expense. Clara took a sharp breath. "This is pre-recorded," Dana said under her breath. "He's not live." He knew we'd come here eventually. Jonathan continued. "If you're watching this, you're my clever little collective. My wives. My secrets. My regrets." He smiled. "Or maybe just my unfinished business." He leaned forward, hands clasped. "You're angry. You're grieving. You're probably planning some poorly executed revenge fantasy. But let me be clear, you're not victims. You're players. And you've just been dealt in." The screen behind him lit up. For words blinked in blood-red letters. One room. One truth. Jonathan stood from his chair. "In this house and in this vault, I've left 5 clues. Solve them, and you'll get access to everything: my assets, the truth, the final confession. Fail, and all this goes back to the dirt. You get nothing. My money goes to organizations that taught me everything I know, criminal schools of thought, if you will." He smiled again. "I'm dead to the law, but not to you. So prove you can outsmart the man you thought you knew." The screen went black. Silence fell. June backed away. This is a trap." "No," Dana said slowly, her eyes still fixed on the blank screen. "This is a challenge." "A game," Sophie whispered. Her voice shook. "He always did love puzzles. He raised me solving riddles and finding hidden rooms. This is exactly how he thinks." I turned to her, stunned. "You knew something like this might happen?" "I didn't know he'd fake his death," she said. "But I always knew he had a failsafe, something that kept him in control, even from the grave." Marisol sat down hard on a nearby chair, her hands trembling. "What kind of man does this?" "A man who never believed he could lose," Clara said quietly. The first clue came quickly. Dana opened one of the metal filing drawers and found a small, engraved plaque inside. "The first lie you believed was the one you told yourself." Beneath it was a note card with a number sequence and the name, Eleanor. My name. I stared at it. "Why me?" Clara touched my arm gently. "Because you were his longest con." The realization knocked the breath out of me. 42 years of loyalty, of shared dinners and empty apologies, had led to this, a man so warped he turned his wives into pawns. The others searched their drawers. Each had a nameplate. Each had a clue, a riddle, or a phrase designed to wound. Clara's, "A lawyer who forgot the law can never reclaim it." Dana's, "You hunted me, but I trained the hunter." June's, "You cataloged fiction. I wrote the truth." Marisol's, "You healed my body, but never touched my mind." Sophie's drawer was empty. "No clue for her?" I asked. She looked even paler than before. I don't know what that means." Dana said, "It means he still doesn't trust you. Not even now." Or, I thought grimly, it means she's not a player. She's the final piece. We gathered the clues. Each sequence, phrase, and fragment felt like Jonathan was still in the room, laughing from behind the walls. But something had changed in us too. We weren't the same women from the cafe. Not anymore. "Let's play," I said, staring into the dark screen. "Let's beat him." Clara nodded. "And when we do, we burn everything he left behind." Dana smiled. "And take everything he thought we'd never find." Sophie remained silent, still staring at the empty drawer. But I kept watching her. Because if Jonathan was still alive somewhere, then Sophie was our one connection to the endgame. And I wasn't sure anymore if she wanted us to win. The first clue was mine. I sat on the cold tile floor of the vault, the engraved plaque resting on my lap like a confession too heavy to carry. The first lie you believed was the one you told yourself. Dana hovered behind me, studying the string of numbers scrawled on the card beneath it. November 3rd, 19 May 17th, 4223-2-8A code. Of course! Jonathan always loved hiding the truth in plain sight. He once proposed to me by writing, "Marry me," inside a crossword puzzle, grinning like a schoolboy. Now I realized that moment wasn't romantic. It was rehearsed. A manipulation. A game he'd been playing since the day we met. Clara pulled up a basic cipher program on her laptop. "Could be a book cipher," she murmured. "We'll need a key, something he knew you'd understand." I closed my eyes. The first lie I told myself. It wasn't that he loved me. It was that he only loved me. I went upstairs alone. Walked slowly through the condo, looking for the key. My fingers traced the edges of furniture, curtain cords, drawer handles, every surface that might have held a secret. In the bedroom, I found it. A copy of The Scarlet Letter sat on the nightstand. My favorite novel. One I made Jonathan read in our 3rd year of marriage. He hated it, said it was too full of female guilt and emotional nonsense. He never forgot the things I loved. Not because he cared, but because he used them. I opened the book. Inside the back cover, in Jonathan's neat, cruel handwriting, page, line, word. "The truth is in what you believed was yours." I ran back downstairs. "Book cipher," I said. He used my copy of The Scarlet Letter as the key. "It's still up there." Dana grabbed the numbers. "Okay, page 11, line 3, word 19. That's our first." We decoded the message word by word, moving through the numbers with surgical focus. And finally, it came together. She chose denial. So I gave her comfort. Then she mistook that for love. My throat closed. I could still feel his hand brushing mine across the breakfast table. The way he used to kiss my forehead when I cried. The soft, "it's going to be okay," that followed every storm he created. He didn't love me. He pitied me. And I had mistaken pity for devotion. Silence for peace. Routine for intimacy. For 42 years. Clara looked at me gently. "You okay?" I shook my head. "No, but I want to finish this. I want to hear every cruel word he thought I couldn't handle." Dana handed me a second card. "You get the next turn, too." Jonathan made sure of it. This one had a second sequence and a phrase, "Where comfort lived, secrets slept." I didn't need to think. I walked to the bedroom, knelt beside the bed, and removed the mattress cover. There, inside the lining, was a sealed envelope. My name was written on the front in red ink. Inside it, another letter. "You were always the softest place I could land, Eleanor. And softness is dangerous. You saw what you wanted to see. You played house while I played God. Still, I left you one kindness. The only thing I never gave anyone else. Open the safe inside the closet. The code is your birthday in reverse. Use it wisely. Or don't. It's yours now." We all followed me back to the upstairs closet. A second safe, one I hadn't even noticed during the first sweep. I entered my birth date backwards. The lock clicked open. Inside, one item. A single velvet box. I opened it. Inside was a ring. But not my wedding ring. This was an emerald set in gold, old, ornate, and breathtaking. The same ring Jonathan once told me he lost in Panama years ago while doing business. Said he'd bought it for me but couldn't bear to replace it. Turns out he never lost it. He just never wanted me to have it. As I stared at the ring, something shifted inside me. Not just grief. Not just rage. Clarity. He never loved any of us, not truly. He collected us. Like trophies. Like insurance. And now he wanted to see what we'd do once the illusions were stripped away. I put the ring on. Then I turned to the others. "I'm done crying over him," I said. Dana nodded. "Then let's move to the next clue." We went back downstairs. Clara's drawer was next. Clara sat rigidly in the metal chair, The engraved plaque from her drawer in her lap. A lawyer who forgot the law can never reclaim it. Her jaw was tight, her posture unshakable, but I saw the flicker of something in her eyes, fear or maybe shame. It was the first time since this began that Clara looked human. She pulled out her envelope. This one wasn't sealed in red ink like mine. It was stapled, cold, efficient. Inside was a thick sheaf of papers. The top page was a will. Not Jonathan's. Not mine. A will from 1982, signed and notarized, in the name of Margot Evelyn Delaney. Dana leaned in. Who is she? Clara's voice was low. She was Jonathan's first wife. The one none of us ever knew about. Sophie's eyes widened. That's impossible. He told me he never married before my mother. Clara flipped through the pages. She left everything to him. Property. Stocks. Retirement savings. But here's the part that matters. Margot disappeared in 1984. Her death certificate was never filed. June paled. You think he? Clara nodded slowly. There were rumors. I read about her once in an old legal forum, someone asking about a missing spouse whose assets were being contested by her widower. I never connected it to Jonathan. She must have been buried under one of his aliases. Marisol covered her mouth. And this isn't just a lie. This is murder. I felt a chill crawl down my back. He hadn't just betrayed us emotionally. He may have killed someone to protect his empire. And now he was laughing from the shadows, daring us to unearth it. Clara continued reading, slower this time. Margot knew too much. She found the original ledgers. The ones I told her were fake. I had to choose between her and the future. I chose well. No signature. Just Jonathan's handwriting, scrawled at the bottom like a footnote from hell. Dana grabbed the stack. If he really killed Margot and this is real, this isn't just a sick game anymore. It's a confession. And a warning, Clara added. He wants us to know how far he'll go. We all stared at the will, silent, until Sophie spoke. I knew the name Margot. She used to send him letters. I remember one arriving when I was little. He got furious, smashed a glass, locked himself in his room. He said it was just spam from a lawyer. You never asked again? I asked. She hesitated. I was 6. When he was angry, you didn't talk. You disappeared. Clara's eyes locked onto hers. And yet you stayed loyal. I was raised by him, Sophie said defensively. You don't question the person who controls your roof, your food, your sense of reality. But you're questioning now, I said softly. Aren't you? She didn't answer. We dug deeper into the papers Clara had. There were references to real estate deeds we hadn't seen before. One in upstate New York, purchased in 1983. Another in Arizona. Both under names we hadn't yet traced. Clara's face twisted in concentration. If we find these properties, we might find where Margot went or what happened to her. Dana opened her laptop. I can trace the Arizona property right now. I saw Clara's hand shake as she folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope. She had built a career on the law, on justice. And now the man she married had danced circles around the system she once trusted. When I placed my hand gently on hers, she didn't pull away. We're not done, I said. He wanted us to fall apart here, to turn on each other. But we're stronger now than we were at his funeral. She nodded once, slowly. Sophie, standing at the corner, finally spoke. Do you think he killed my mother too? Nobody answered. Because none of us were ready for what that answer might mean. The Arizona property was registered under the name Lewis Harrington, one of Jonathan's lesser-used aliases. It was a stretch of desert land just outside Yuma, flat, isolated, and forgotten by the world. Dana found it in public records after cross-referencing the 1983 deed buried inside Margot's will. She looked up from her laptop, eyes grim. It's still active. Taxes paid, utilities shut off for years, but someone renewed the land registry just 5 months ago. 5 months ago? Clara asked. But Jonathan was already dying then. Exactly, Dana said. Or pretending to. A long silence filled the room. We booked flights that night. We drove 2 hours from Phoenix to reach the property. The road disappeared into silence, and the air felt heavier with every mile. I couldn't explain it, just a weight in my chest, like the desert itself was holding its breath. There was no house, no cabin, just a rusted chain-link fence around a stretch of flat land, marked by a single metal gate. A crude wooden sign hung sideways, the words faded, "Private, keep out." We parked just outside and climbed over. The ground crunched under our shoes, dry and stubborn. A cluster of withered mesquite trees leaned east, and behind them, we found it, a small hatch buried in dirt and stone, locked with 2 padlocks. New ones. Sophie knelt beside it. "This isn't old." "No," Dana muttered. "It was put here recently." Clara stood back, her arms crossed. "He knew we'd find it." I stared at the hatch. I could barely breathe. "What is this place?" I whispered. Sophie said, "It's a grave." We didn't have bolt cutters, so Dana improvised, hammered the locks loose with the tire iron from our rental car. It took 15 minutes, and by the time the final padlock snapped, sweat poured down our backs and the desert sun had become a second enemy. Together, we lifted the hatch. A ladder led downward into darkness. The scent hit us first, earth, old metal, something sour beneath it. June hesitated. "Maybe we should call someone." "No," Clara said firmly. "If there's something buried down there, it's because Jonathan didn't want anyone to find it. And I won't let the system fail again." I descended first. The tunnel was narrow, carved by hand or cheap machinery. The walls were reinforced with rusted sheet metal, and the single bulb hanging above buzzed like a dying fly. At the bottom, a steel door waited. On it, scrawled in red spray paint, "Only the guilty dig." I pushed it open. The room was cold. Cement walls. 1 chair. 1 desk. And stacked in the corner, metal crates. Dana opened the first crate. Inside, women's belongings. A scarf. A leather journal. A gold locket. A pair of heels carefully placed. Each crate labeled with a date and a name. One label read, "Margot Delaney. 1984. Clara's knees buckled. Marisol caught her." Sophie opened the second crate. "Leona Benton. 1991. We didn't recognize the name." Then the third. "Isabel T. 1999. More. Crate after crate. Women we had never heard of. Women he never told anyone about. "He didn't just con us," I whispered. "He collected women. Controlled them. Discarded them." Clara clutched the journal from Margot's crate. She opened it, flipping through pages of delicate handwriting. Margot's voice, captured forever. "He promised me a new life. A fresh start. Then he told me I was better off invisible." At the very bottom of the stack was a black box. Smaller. Sleek. Different. Inside it, photos. One of Jonathan, smiling in front of a cabin. Another of him with Sophie, her as a child, maybe 4 years old, smiling on a swing. And another. Of a woman we didn't recognize. She looked like Sophie. Not identical, but close. Sophie's hand trembled as she picked it up. "My mother," she whispered. "He always said she died in childbirth." "But that's not true, is it?" I placed my hand gently on her shoulder. "No," I said. "I don't think it is." We brought everything back to the condo. That night, we laid out the evidence on the vault table. Names. Faces. Stories none of us were prepared to carry. The truth was far darker than anything we'd imagined. Jonathan didn't just cheat us. He built his empire on the pain of forgotten women. And if he was still out there watching us, we were going to make sure he knew we were coming for him. None of us slept that night. The air in the condo was thick with truth, undeniable, brutal truth. We had gone looking for fraud, for betrayal, for lies we could stomach. Instead, we unearthed graves. Names of women who vanished like mist. Evidence stored in crates like forgotten shoes. And we had no idea how many more were still out there, buried beneath layers of fake names and scorched identities. Sophie was quiet. Too quiet. She sat alone in the corner of the vault, flipping through her mother's photo over and over again. We didn't press her. Grief is a slow burn, and for her, it wasn't just the loss of her father, it was the unmaking of her childhood. Every bedtime story, every hug, every "I love you," now smeared in blood and manipulation. But what none of us knew, what none of us saw, was what Sophie was planning. I found out the next morning when I walked into the study and saw the old laptop we'd kept offline glowing softly on the desk. An email sat open on the screen. To Liam Beckert at Proton Mail. Com subject, it's time body, Jonathan is dead. But his daughters have questions. I want to talk. You owe me that much. Sophie, I froze. Clara walked in behind me. What is it? I turned the screen. She contacted someone. A man named Liam Beckert. Clara's face drained of color. Liam Beckert. Jesus Christ. He was Jonathan's financial partner in the late 90s. They ran 3 companies together, laundered money through nonprofits, fake charities, scholarships that never existed. Dana rushed in. He was also investigated in 2001. Charges dropped for lack of evidence. Disappeared after that. Changed his name. Went off-grid. And now Sophie's reached out, I said, anger rising in my throat. Without telling any of us. Clara clicked open the sent folder. Email went out 4 hours ago. Just then, we heard footsteps behind us. Sophie. She stood in the doorway, her face unreadable. Her arms folded tightly over her chest. You weren't supposed to find that. You weren't supposed to send it, I snapped. What the hell were you thinking? I was thinking, she said coldly, that while all of you were drowning in emotion and trauma, someone had to take action. We are taking action, Clara shot back. But smart action. Calculated. Not desperate. Sophie stepped inside, her voice rising. Liam knows more than we do. He helped my father bury these women, fund these properties, forge these identities. If anyone has records of who the real victims were, it's him. He's also a criminal, I said. Who vanished for a reason. Sophie's eyes welled, but she didn't cry. I need answers. I need to know if my mother is still alive, or if she ended up in one of those crates. The room fell into heavy silence. I wanted to scream at her. Shake her. Tell her she'd jeopardized everything we'd built so far. But I couldn't. Because a part of me, deep, hidden, reluctant, understood. I'd risked everything once, too. For less. Dana turned to her. Did he reply? Sophie nodded slowly. A few minutes ago. He said. Meet me tomorrow. Noon. At the place where Jonathan burned the maps. Marisol frowned. What does that mean? Sophie looked at me. Eleanor, do you remember a road trip you took with him in 1998? Somewhere in Utah. My throat dried. Yes. Arches National Park. He made me burn old maps after we got lost. Said they were outdated. Useless. Clara's eyes narrowed. That's where Liam wants to meet. Dana groaned. This is a setup. Or it's a breadcrumb, Sophie said. We have to go. No, I said firmly. You don't go anywhere. Not alone. Not again. Sophie's lip trembled. Then come with me. We debated it for hours. But in the end, there was no choice. We had to go. Jonathan's network might still be alive, ghosts of his crimes moving through the world like veins under skin. If Liam knew even half of what Jonathan left behind, we needed to hear it. But deep in my gut, something twisted. It wasn't just Sophie's recklessness. It was the way Jonathan always thought 2 steps ahead. If Liam had been his partner, then this meeting wasn't just about information. It was a trap. And we were walking straight into it. We flew into Utah the next morning under a sickly sky that felt like it knew something we didn't. As our car crawled down the dusty road leading toward Arches National Park, a quiet settled over us. Not peace, tension. The kind that hums just under your skin, warning you this is the last calm before something snaps. Sophie sat in the back, staring out the window, pale and tight-lipped. Clara hadn't spoken to her since the email. Dana was on edge, a small Glock hidden in her waist holster, her instincts from her military days burning hot. June prayed under her breath. I just gripped the wheel harder and followed the coordinates Liam had sent. Jonathan had brought me here once. We'd argued the whole way, then laughed like children when we got lost in the desert. That night, by a dying fire, he pulled out a stack of maps and told me they were holding us back. He made me burn them. I thought it was symbolic, about letting go. Now I knew it was literal. He was hiding something even then. We reached the spot just before noon. A wide, Open plains stretched out before us, scattered with red rock formations and scorched ground where fire had once eaten through paper and ink. In the center of the clearing stood a single man, Liam Beckert. Tall, graying, sunglasses tucked into the collar of his windbreaker. He looked like a retired professor, not a criminal. But the second he smiled, I felt my stomach twist. He wasn't alone. Two men stepped from behind the rocks. One younger, armed. The other older, silent, tense. No introductions. Just presence. Threat. Liam raised a hand. "Ladies," he said. "I expected fewer of you." Dana stepped forward. "We don't split up. You want to talk to all of us." He chuckled. "Very democratic." Sophie moved next to me. "Tell me about my mother." Liam's eyes softened just a touch. "You still look like her." "Is she alive?" A long pause. "Then, she was. Until 2004. Sophie's knees buckled slightly, but she held her ground. "How?" Liam didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a USB stick. "Everything I know about your father's accounts, properties, partners, victims is on here. Records Jonathan thought he erased. I kept them. Just in case." "Why?" I asked. "Why help us now?" Liam smiled, but it didn't touch his eyes. "Because he burned me too. After Margot disappeared, I asked questions. Too many. He blackmailed me, buried me, and made me disappear. But I'm tired of hiding. And you've already pulled back the curtain. You deserve to know what's on the other side." Dana took the stick slowly, her eyes locked on his. "But," Liam added, "there's a catch." Of course there was. "You'll find evidence in those files," he said. "Enough to destroy everything Jonathan built. But you'll also find names of women he's still paying off. Women who helped him, some knowingly, some out of fear. Ex-wives. Lovers. Accomplices. Including one of you." Every head turned. Silence. Sophie whispered, "What are you saying?" Liam pointed at the USB. "He planted someone in your little widow's circle. Not just to watch, but to manipulate. One of you isn't what she claims to be." Clara took a slow step forward. "And you won't tell us who?" Liam shrugged. "Would you believe me if I did?" Then he turned to go. "Wait," Sophie called. "How do we know this isn't a setup?" Liam looked over his shoulder, his voice flat. "You don't." And then he was gone. The men with him vanished into the rocks, silent as smoke. We drove back to the hotel in silence. No one spoke during the ride. No one dared. The USB sat on Dana's lap like a loaded gun. And now the truth was no longer just about Jonathan. It was about us. One of us was a plant. One of us was lying. And we had no idea who. Back at the condo, we gathered in the vault. No one said a word. Dana placed the USB stick into the laptop and powered it on. The screen flickered for a moment before a single folder appeared. It was titled simply, "The Legacy." I stared at it like it might explode. Clara leaned over Dana's shoulder, jaw clenched. Sophie sat on the floor, hugging her knees, eyes red but dry. Marisol stood near the exit, too far from the laptop, too close to the door. None of us trusted each other now. Not fully. Because one of us was playing both sides. Dana clicked the folder. Inside were subfolders, each named after a location or a date. Baltimore, 1994 Dublin, 2002 Zurich, 2007 Costa Rica, 2023 Vault. Active, open that last one, I whispered. The one labeled Vault. Dana hesitated, then clicked. A list of video files appeared. Vault, cam, feed, 0425. MP4 Vault, cam, feed, 0503. MP4 Vault, cam, feed, 0601. MP4, she opened one. The screen filled with grainy footage from this room, this very vault, recorded just 2 months ago. We all leaned in. There we were, on screen, Clara, me, Dana, Marisol, Sophie. Sitting at this very table, drinking coffee, studying Jonathan's files. But the timestamp was after Jonathan's death. Sophie covered her mouth. This was after the funeral. Dana clicked another. Same feed. Same room. But this time, the camera panned a smooth robotic sweep and zoomed in on a drawer. The one Sophie had opened on her first day here. She said it had been empty. But in this footage, something was inside. A black envelope. She pulled it out. Alone. And looked around, before slipping it into her coat. The room dropped into silence. Sophie stood slowly, trembling. I didn't know it was recording. I found the envelope by accident. What was in it? Clara asked. She didn't answer. Dana rose, eyes locked on her. You've been hiding something since the beginning. And now this confirms it. I'm not the one he planted, Sophie said sharply. He raised me, yes, but he also lied to me my whole life. That envelope was about my mother. I didn't want to share it until I knew what it meant. Clara crossed her arms. Then where's it? In my room, she said quietly. You can see it. I haven't destroyed it. I didn't move. I just watched her. Sophie, I said, if that envelope contains what I think it does, proof of what happened to your mother, then you need to show us. All of us. She nodded slowly. Okay, come. We followed her down the hall. She unlocked her suitcase and reached under a hidden lining, pulled out the black envelope. Inside was a single photo and a page of notes typed. The photo was of a woman strapped to a hospital bed. Eyes closed. Tubes running from her arms. The timestamp read 2004. The location, a private psychiatric facility in Switzerland. The woman was Sophie's mother. The notes were cold, clinical, and damning. Patient, Annette Jules Moore diagnosis, dissociative amnesia, paranoia, hallucinations, delusional pregnancy. Admitted, 2003. Guardian, Jonathan M. Status, silenced via Schedule E protocol. Location, restricted. Dana read the final line aloud. Do not disclose existence of this facility. Subject has been erased from civil registry. We all stood there, frozen. Jonathan hadn't just abandoned Sophie's mother. He'd erased her. Institutionalized her in a foreign country. Labeled her unstable. And buried her under lies. I told you I wasn't hiding anything to hurt you, Sophie whispered. I just couldn't breathe. I needed time to understand what this meant. Clara's face was blank. And now? I want to find her. And if she's still alive? I asked gently. Sophie met my eyes. Then I'll bring her back. And I'll make sure Jonathan's name burns for what he did to her. There was silence. Until Dana said, there's more on that USB. More footage. More files. If we want to find out who the real traitor is, we need to keep digging. We returned to the vault. And that's when we saw it. Another video. This one dated the morning we arrived in Costa Rica. Vault, cam feed, 0422. MP4 Dana opened it. The footage showed one of us entering the vault, alone, before anyone else had arrived, and beginning to move the contents of the safe. Clara leaned in. Is that? She stopped. We all stared at the screen, because the face on that footage was Marisol's. Marisol didn't run. She just stood there frozen in the doorway of the vault, watching the footage of herself on the screen. Her expression was unreadable. No panic. No denial. Just an eerie calm, like a woman who knew her secrets had come home to roost. On the screen, she moved with practiced ease, gloved hands opening the safe, removing documents, then sliding in her own envelope before relocking it. Dana stood up slowly, blocking the door. You want to tell us what the hell that was? Marisol looked at each of us, her gaze heavy, but not defiant. Before you accuse me of anything, she said softly, I want you to hear everything. Then decide if I deserve your anger. I folded my arms. Go on. She sat at the edge of the desk, her fingers trembling slightly as she laced them together. I met Jonathan in 2005. I was working at a private recovery clinic in South America. He came in under a fake name, said he was detoxing from a breakdown. Charming, smooth, generous. But there was something in his eyes, something cold. She paused, her throat tightening. We got close. Too close. I thought he needed healing. I thought I was helping him. Clara's voice cut in. You thought you could fix a monster? I thought I could love one, Marisol said, eyes flashing. And for a while. I did. The room went silent. Dana's hands flexed near her holster. What did you do for him? He asked for files. falsified health reports, access to controlled substances. At first, I refused. But then he showed me something. A contract. A document stating that my sister, who was in prison for drug trafficking, had been part of a test program run by one of his fake clinics. He blackmailed me. Said he could make her sentence disappear. Marisol's voice cracked. And he did. Just like that, my sister was released. Charges dropped. But I had to stay. Keep working for him. Moving patients. Silencing records. You helped him institutionalize women, I whispered. You helped him vanish them. She nodded slowly. Yes, I did. Clara stood, furious. And you came to Costa Rica pretending to be just another widow? I was one, Marisol snapped. After a few years, I realized Jonathan was never going to free me. I wasn't his lover anymore, I was his tool. When I tried to leave, he threatened my family again. So I ran. I changed my name, cut all ties. I thought I was free. Until the funeral, Sophie said coldly. He left me something, Marisol whispered. A letter, telling me to come here. Said if I didn't, my sister would go back to prison. That he had one last debt for me to repay. And you repaid it by hiding documents, Dana said. What was in the envelope you planted? Marisol reached into her bag and pulled it out. She handed it to me. I opened it slowly. Inside, medical records. Dozens of them. Patients from the same clinic where Sophie's mother had been kept. Names, conditions, secret protocols. Each page stamped with a logo. Foundation for Ethical Psychiatry, Zurich branch. Jonathan's final ghost. I brought this here, Marisol said, because I knew if I left it in the open, none of you would trust it. But if you discovered it later, you might believe it was real. Manipulation, Dana growled. No, Marisol said, her voice barely above a whisper. Desperation. I stared at the pages. Dozens of women. Erased. Branded unstable. Treated like problems instead of people. This is a kill list, Clara muttered. No, I said, my voice cracking. It's a survivor list. These women might still be out there. Alive. If we can find them, Sophie finished the sentence for me. We can expose him. All of it. There was a long, horrible pause. Then Clara stepped closer to Marisol. Do you still work for him? No, she said quietly. He doesn't need me anymore. You're sure he's alive? Marisol met her gaze, firm now. Yes. If he were dead, none of this would be happening. Dana looked to me. Do we keep her? I stared at Marisol. Broken. Ashamed. But not lying. She stayed, I said finally. When she could have vanished. She gave us names. Faces. Evidence. And that matters. Clara looked like she wanted to scream. But she didn't. She nodded once. That night, we scanned the records into Dana's system. Laid them beside Jonathan's offshore account numbers. Combined them with Margot's will and the evidence from the Arizona crates. What we had now was enough to bring down an empire. But it wouldn't be easy. Because if Jonathan was alive, he'd see us coming. And I had no doubt he was preparing his next move. The storm broke just after midnight. Rain crashed against the windows of the condo as if the sky itself wanted to drown us. We huddled in the vault, faces pale from the flickering glow of the laptop screen, hearts raw from truths we could no longer outrun. The documents Marisol had given us lay scattered across the table like broken bones. I thought we had reached the edge of revelation. But the real fracture, the one that would split everything apart, was still waiting. And it came in the form of a single email. Sophie was the one who found it. She'd been digging through Jonathan's old encrypted folders on the USB, folder after folder marked with aliases, shell companies, offshore accounts. Until she clicked one called simply, for her. Inside, a lone video file, Sophie Truth Final. MOV, she didn't show it to us right away. She watched it alone, headphones on, in her room. I found her afterward, sitting in the hallway, trembling, knees drawn to her chest, lips pressed tight to keep from screaming. Her face had drained of all color and her eyes. I'll never forget those eyes. Shattered. Shining with disbelief. And something else. Betrayal. We gathered in the vault, all 6 of us. Sophie stood beside the laptop, her voice hollow. You all deserve to see it." And then she hit play. Jonathan appeared on screen, seated in what looked like a private study, walls lined with old books, dimly lit, but clean. He wore a deep navy sweater, his hair perfectly combed, his face calm. Not sick. Not dying. Not even remorseful. "Hello, Sophie. If you're watching this, I'm gone." Or at least, that's what they think. I've spent my life preparing for this moment. Watching them gather like vultures. Your mothers. My enemies. But you were different. You were mine. And I protected you in ways you never understood. I gave you truth, piece by piece, to make you strong. Now it's time for your real inheritance. The screen flickered. A map appeared, coordinates pointing to a remote island off the coast of Panama. Then another file, account access to a private vault in Geneva, under her name. Clara swore under her breath. He left her everything. But Jonathan wasn't done. You've seen the women. The liars. The thieves. The ones who wore rings and cried tears, but never truly knew me. You're the only one who ever could. If you want to be part of something greater, come find me. If not, then burn this. End them with it. I won't wait forever. The screen went black. No one moved. Not even Sophie. The only sound was the distant rumble of thunder and the faint drip of rain. Dana's voice was low. That was recorded recently. Look at the background. Those books weren't there 10 years ago. He's alive. Clara turned to Sophie. And now you have a choice. I didn't ask for this, Sophie said softly. But he gave it to you, Clara snapped. He's offering you money, power, freedom. You said you hated him, Sophie, so prove it. Sophie looked at me. I could see the war inside her. The daughter who wanted revenge. And the little girl still aching for her father's love. I don't know what I'm going to do, she said. Dana stepped closer. You do. You just don't want to say it out loud. Sophie's voice hardened. I'm not going to betray you. But you already did, Clara shot back. You kept the envelope. You emailed Liam. You lied, over and over again. Marisol whispered. He got to her. Even now, he still owns a part of her. Sophie stepped back like we'd slapped her. I didn't ask to be born into this. I didn't choose him. But you have a choice now, I said, gently. You can stay. Finish this. Help us bring him down. Or, she whispered. Or walk out that door, I said, and become the thing he wanted you to be. Sophie looked around the room. At Clara, burning with fury. At Dana, watching like a soldier on the edge of a war. At Marisol, haunted by the past. At me. And then, without a word, she walked out. None of us followed her. The sound of her car starting echoed like thunder across the courtyard. And, just like that, the circle was broken. And Jonathan had claimed his first piece. Again. We sat in silence long after Sophie left. The rain had stopped, but it felt like something else had broken, something inside the walls of the condo, or inside each of us. Sophie had been the youngest, the most innocent, the one with the most to lose, and still, she walked straight into Jonathan's trap. He didn't need to be alive to destroy us. He'd already done it. From the grave, from the shadows, from wherever he was, he knew exactly where to cut. But I had a wound of my own. And it was time to open it. The Geneva vault was real. We confirmed it the next morning. Jonathan had hidden a Swiss bank box under my name, Eleanor May Whitaker, opened in 1996, dormant for decades. Dana booked the flights. Clara made the calls. Marisol sat in stunned silence. None of us knew why the account was tied to me. But I did. I just hadn't told them yet. Because I hadn't told anyone. We arrived in Geneva 2 days later. Cold wind, sharp air, glass buildings glinting like judgment. The vault was buried in a private financial institution, a nameless, polished white building with no signage, no warmth. Just a code, a biometric scan, and a silence that suffocated every breath. I placed my hand on the scanner. It accepted me instantly. Inside the vault was a small, black case. No markings. No key required. I opened it with trembling fingers. And found something I had buried in myself for nearly 30 years. The envelope was yellowed, sealed with red wax. Inside, a marriage certificate. Jonathan Miles Harrington Eleanor May Whitaker wedding date, September 17th, 1982 location, Copenhagen, Denmark. Clara's breath hitched. You were married to him first? I nodded. Before Margot. Before everyone. I was the original. Marisol whispered. He told us Margot was first. He lied, I said. Of course he did. Margot came after me. I left him. I faked a divorce. I erased myself. Because I knew what he was. Clara's voice cracked with disbelief. And you didn't tell us this? Any of it? I didn't think it mattered, I whispered. I thought, if I stayed hidden long enough, it would all disappear. I never thought he'd drag me back into his game. Dana was staring at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. Eleanor, she said, what else is in the box? I swallowed. And pulled out the final item. A photo. A child. A little boy. Maybe 5 years old. Blonde hair. Laughing. On the back, scrawled in Jonathan's sharp handwriting, he's mine. And he doesn't know it. Protect him, or I'll find him myself. Dana grabbed the photo. Who is this? My son, I said softly. He's mine. And Jonathan's. I never told anyone. Not even the boy himself. Clara stepped back as if slapped. You lied to all of us. For months. And now you're saying you were his first wife, that you had a son with him, and that you never told us. I was trying to protect my child, I said. I thought, if I stayed quiet, he'd stay out of Jonathan's reach. But he's not, Dana whispered. Not anymore. I nodded. He's 29 now. Living in Vancouver. He doesn't know who his father is. He doesn't know any of this. Marisol looked like she'd seen a ghost. And Jonathan knew. He's probably watching him now. Waiting. Just like he waited for Sophie. The truth had finally come full circle. I wasn't just a victim. I was the beginning. The lie that started it all. And now, Jonathan had reminded me what he always loved most. Power. Control. Secrets. And he'd saved the deepest cut for last, turning me into the traitor I never meant to become. We returned from Geneva hollowed out. No one spoke on the flight. No one looked at me. Clara sat 3 rows ahead, her arms folded tight, her jaw clenched with silent rage. Dana watched everyone with her soldier's suspicion, as if daring us to blink wrong. Marisol cried once, quietly, into her coat sleeve, and then said nothing for hours. And me? I sat with Jonathan's photo of our son clutched against my ribs, like a sin I didn't know how to confess. Because I wasn't just the first wife. I was the first lie. We arrived back in Costa Rica just past midnight. The rain had returned, louder this time, relentless, and it wasn't until we entered the condo that we saw it, a white envelope. Sitting on the glass table in the middle of the living room. None of us had keys but us. None of us had touched the alarm. Clara stepped back instinctively. Dana drew her gun. I stepped forward, hands trembling, and picked it up. No name, no return address. Just a blood-red wax seal. I opened it. And read words that made my blood freeze. You chose to dig up the past, Eleanor. Now I'll bury your future. Your son walks through Stanley Park every morning at 7:14 a.m. alone. In blue headphones. Today, he wore the jacket you gave him on his 21st birthday. The one with the torn pocket. Tell the others to stop. Or I won't just take him. I'll make sure he ends up in a crate like the rest. My knees gave out. I dropped to the floor, the letter slipping from my fingers, and for the first time in decades, I screamed, not from fear, not from rage, but from guilt. From knowing that in running from my past, I had led my child straight into the trap I thought I had escaped. The others stood frozen. Until Dana stepped forward, picked up the letter, and read it silently. Her face turned to steel. This is a threat, she said. We report it. We protect him. Clara interrupted, her voice sharp. We stop this. Right now. No, Dana snapped. That's what he wants. Marisol whispered, what if he's already there? What if he's watching your son? I pressed my hand to my chest, trying to breathe. I need to go to Vancouver. I need to bring him here. Dana shook her head. No, you need to send someone else. If Jonathan sees you, he'll know we've read the letter. Clara's voice cut like ice. Why should we protect your son when you didn't trust us enough to tell the truth? I turned to her. Because he's innocent. Because he didn't choose any of this. Neither did we, she snapped. Marisol placed a hand on Clara's arm. That boy is our blood now, too. Whether we want it or not. The condo divided that night. Dana began planning security for my son. Travel arrangements. Surveillance. I gave her everything: his photos, routines, the name he didn't know belonged to Jonathan Harrington. Clara retreated into herself, furious but quiet, guarding her pain like armor. I knew what she was thinking. If I could lie once, what else was I still hiding? Sophie was gone. Trust was gone. And now even our unity was cracking under the weight of truths we hadn't asked for. But it wasn't just about us anymore. Jonathan had made it about our children. And the moment he crossed that line, he gave us something far more powerful than revenge. He gave us purpose. At 4 a.m., Dana left for Vancouver. She would retrieve my son. She would protect him with her life. And I would stay behind. To prepare for what was coming. Because now I understood something terrifying and final: Jonathan wasn't hiding anymore. He was waiting. And the next move was his. Dana always moved like a blade, sharp, silent, and ready. When she landed in Vancouver, it was still dark, the sky overcast and low, the kind of gray that swallowed sound. She wore black from head to toe and carried no luggage. Just a small sidearm tucked into her coat and a single photograph folded inside her wallet: my son. A face that didn't know his blood was cursed. She didn't call me when she arrived. That had been the plan. No contact. No messages. The less traceable we were, the better. Jonathan had eyes. And as Dana stepped out into the streets of a city just waking up, she felt it. The heaviness. The watching. She walked 3 blocks from the airport and rented a battered Honda. She turned off her phone. Pulled on a beanie. Then she began the search. At exactly 7:10 a.m., she parked across from Stanley Park. According to the letter, this was when he walked: blue headphones, torn pocket jacket, quiet, solitary. And at 7:14 a.m., he appeared. Dana's breath caught. He looked just like me. Same sharp chin, same tired eyes. He moved like someone with too much on his mind. His hands were jammed into his pockets, his head bowed. The headphones, blue, looped around his neck. She stepped out of the car but didn't approach. She followed. From across the street. Through the mist rising from the grass. Past joggers and morning dog walkers. Each footstep precise. Each turn calculated. But after 2 blocks, she felt it again. That sensation. She was being followed, too. She ducked into a small bookstore, pretending to browse. Pulled a dusty copy of The Count of Monte Cristo from the shelf and peered through the cracked window. There, across the street. A man. Gray hoodie. Baseball cap. Standing too still. Not reading. Not walking. Just watching. Jonathan's men. Dana moved fast after that. She waited until my son had turned down a narrow garden path, one that curved behind the aquarium, and then she closed the distance. Her voice was calm, low. Jeremy. He turned, confused. Yeah, I'm a friend of your mother's, she said. She sent me. You're in danger. He blinked. What? I think you've got the wrong. Your name is Jeremy Whitaker. You work at the college bookstore. You live in Kitsilano. And someone's watching you who wants to hurt your mother. His face turned white. And then the gunshot cracked through the fog. Dana pushed him to the ground. The first bullet slammed into the tree behind them. She grabbed his wrist and hauled him up, running with him through the garden path, weaving through hedges and across wet stone. He stumbled, gasping, shocked. What the hell is happening? He shouted. I'll explain later, Dana snapped. Right now, run. They darted into an alley and reached the car within 4 minutes. Dana shoved him into the passenger seat, yanked the gear into drive, and tore down the empty street. Another car pulled out behind them. Black. Windows tinted. Jonathan wasn't sending warnings anymore. He was sending killers. Back in Costa Rica, I felt it before the call even came. The shift in the air. The way Clara wouldn't meet my eyes. The silence from Marisol. The echo in the hallway where Sophie's laugh used to be. When Dana's voice came through the encrypted call, it was rough, low. We're safe for now. But someone fired. They knew exactly where he'd be. Jeremy. I whispered. He's alive. And he's listening. I heard rustling on the other end. Then his voice. Mom? I broke. I wept like I hadn't in decades. Not from weakness, but from the horror of knowing how close he'd come to dying for a secret I buried. Jonathan wasn't just taunting us now. He was declaring war. The decision was unanimous. We were done running, done hiding, done crying over graves and ghosts. Jonathan had gone too far. He'd drawn blood, threatened children, broken every code we once believed in. And now we were coming for him. Dana returned to Costa Rica with Jeremy 2 days later. He was still shaken, who wouldn't be? But when he looked at me, it wasn't with blame. It was confusion, sadness, and a deep, unspoken question in his eyes that I couldn't answer. How could you have loved a man like that? I didn't say it out loud, but I thought it every day. The 6 of us gathered once again, fractured but not broken. Me, Dana, Clara, Marisol, Jeremy, and, surprisingly, Sophie. She returned the night Dana came back. No fanfare. No apology. Just walked through the door and said, "He's worse than I thought." She had a folder in her hand. Inside, coordinates, flight logs, satellite images. The island. Jonathan's final sanctuary. Located in the Gulf of Chiriqui, Panama, private, unmarked, and recently outfitted with communications towers, solar generators, and what appeared to be underground facilities. Clara blinked. Is he building a bunker? No, Sophie said. He's building a kingdom. We planned everything within 36 hours. Dana would lead. 2 former contacts from her military years were flown in off-book, no records. Marisol arranged a charter boat. Clara handled the encrypted GPS tracking. Jeremy and Sophie helped with translations and intel. And me? I gathered the evidence, the files, the confessions, the documents. Because when we reached him, we were going to end him. We set off just before dawn. The island came into view as the sun cracked over the ocean, a jagged mass of green rising from the sea like something cursed. Fog coiled around its base. No birds, no wind, just stillness. As we docked, I felt something shift deep in my bones. Not fear, familiarity. He was here, and he was waiting. We moved in silence, flashlights off, following Sophie's map through the undergrowth. A narrow dirt path led to a steel door built into the hillside. Dana scanned for traps, then picked the lock. Inside, it was cold, sterile, concrete walls, surveillance equipment, rooms with no windows. And then we found it. A chamber, a desk, a laptop still warm, and on the wall photographs. Dozens. Of all of us. Clara in her garden, Marisol at a cafe, Dana in the rain, me holding Jeremy when he was 5, and in the center, a photo of Sophie. But not just Sophie. Sophie standing beside a woman. Tall, sharp-eyed, blonde. Clara stepped forward, jaw trembling. That's my niece. Her name was Lena. She had visited Clara for summers when she was young. Sweet, quiet, a little shy. Then she disappeared after college, no calls, no letters, no trace. Clara thought she'd joined a research group in Europe. But Lena hadn't disappeared. Jonathan had taken her. And trained her. Sophie found the files. Video logs. Voice recordings. Training documents. Lena sparring, shooting, learning to lie, to disappear, to manipulate. A prodigy. A weapon. A replacement. He wasn't just hiding. He was building a legacy. One built not on bloodlines, but on loyalty. I thought he wanted me to replace him, Sophie whispered. No, Dana said darkly. He already had someone else. A red light blinked on the laptop. A message appeared on screen. Welcome home, Eleanor. I've missed your mind. Come downstairs. It's time we finished what we started. We stared at each other. Clara was shaking. Dana cocked her gun. Sophie stood straighter. And I stepped forward, toward the darkness waiting below. Because whatever was down there, whatever Jonathan had become, whatever Lena had become, I would face it. Because I started this. and I would be the one to end it. The metal staircase creaked with every step. Each sound echoed down the concrete throat of Jonathan's bunker like a countdown. My heart pounded, but I didn't look back. I couldn't. Behind me were Dana, Clara, Marisol, Sophie, and Jeremy, each of them carrying their own scars, their own rage. Ahead of us? Hell. Not fire and brimstone, but steel and shadow. Control rooms. Medical labs. Surveillance panels. This was more than a hideout. It was a museum of manipulation. A monument to Jonathan's legacy. And at the bottom of it, a door. Thick. Sealed. Marked with a single word, truth. Dana motioned for silence. She pressed her ear to the door. No sound. No movement. Then, softly, he's in there. I stepped forward, hand on the knob, before anyone could stop me. No, Clara hissed. You don't go first. I have to, I said. It began with me. It ends with me. But the moment I turned the handle, the door swung open on its own, revealing the man who ruined all our lives. Jonathan Harrington stood in the center of a room bathed in cold blue light. He wore a charcoal suit, spotless. No guards. No weapons. Just him. And beside him, Lena. Clara gasped. She was no longer the soft-spoken girl from childhood summers. Her face was sharp. Eyes ice blue. Military posture. Calm. Deadly. She looked right through us. Jonathan smiled like a king. Eleanor, he said. You brought the whole family. I stepped into the room. Don't call it that. He chuckled. Still so righteous. Behind me, the others followed, guns raised. But Jonathan didn't flinch. You found the files. The vaults. The women. Good. You needed to know the cost of power. And now we know what you really are, Sophie said. A builder, he replied. A protector. You think I destroyed women? I saved them from mediocrity. From silence. I made them matter. By locking them in psych wards and stealing their identities? Marisol snarled. He smiled wider. I made them remembered. You want me to be evil, so you can justify your rage. But you and I, Eleanor, we're not so different. I shook my head. Don't you dare. You lied to your son. Lied to these women. Lied to yourself. But the difference is he raised a hand. I've always told the truth. Just not all at once. Suddenly, Lena stepped forward. And pointed a gun. At me. Clara shouted, Lena, no. Lena's voice was low. Cold. He saved me. Trained me. You all abandoned me. He made me matter. Sophie moved to shield me, but Dana stepped between them, weapon drawn, voice steady. Put it down, Lena. Please. Lena didn't move. Jonathan turned to her. Now, my dear. Show them what loyalty looks like. But Lena's hand wavered. Tears filled her eyes. And for a moment, the little girl Clara once loved broke through. I'm so tired, Lena whispered. And then a shot rang out. I screamed. Dana lunged. The bullet had struck, dead center, Jonathan. He stumbled back, eyes wide with betrayal, blood blooming across his chest. He looked at Lena, stunned. Why? She was crying now. Because I remembered who I was before you. He collapsed his knees. Then the floor. Dead. Silence. None of us moved. Then Lena dropped the gun and fell into Clara's arms. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I was lost. Clara held her, weeping. For her. For herself. For all of us. But the cost wasn't done. Because as we turned to leave, we saw Marisol standing by the panel. Her hand resting on a button. Her eyes full of peace. Go, she said softly. This place can't exist anymore. Dana rushed forward. Don't you dare. Marisol smiled. I helped him build this. I know what's buried here. Data. Faces. Secrets. This can't survive. You'll die, I whispered. I died years ago. And before any of us could stop her, she pressed it. Self-destruct sequence initiated. We ran. Sophie screamed for Marisol. Jeremy pulled me through the corridor. Alarms blared. Fire lit behind us. And as we reached the boat, turning back just once, the island bloomed in flames. And Marisol was gone. She didn't just destroy Jonathan's bunker. She destroyed his name. His empire. his sickness. And she did it for us. Before you scroll away, I need you to hear this. Because this isn't just my story anymore, it's ours. The world thinks women over 60 disappear. That we fade, shrink, grow silent. But what they don't understand is this. Sometimes, we've simply been watching, learning, waiting for the moment we take our lives back. And we did. The investigation broke open within days. Sophie leaked the Zurich patient files to the media anonymously. Overnight, Jonathan Harrington's name was everywhere, exposed as a con man, abuser, bigamist, trafficker of silence. Dana delivered the hard drives to international justice organizations. Clara testified to a Senate Oversight Committee on Corruption in Global Mental Health Institutions. Lena turned state's evidence. She named every handler, every silent funder, every shadowed ally Jonathan ever had. And in exchange for immunity, she burned his entire legacy down, one file at a time. And me? I told the world the truth. On record. Under oath. Face uncovered. The fallout was brutal. Lawsuits. Protests. Former wives and survivors stepping forward, one after another. Faces that had once lived in shadows now stood in front of cameras, holding photos of their stolen years. And Jonathan? He was buried. Not with honor. Not with tears. But in an unmarked grave in a government facility, with only a case number on his file. That's what he became. A cautionary tale. Not a legacy. We scattered after that. Each of us carrying something the others couldn't. Dana returned to her small cabin in Montana. Still sharp, still fierce, but softer now. She teaches women self-defense in the afternoons and grows lavender in the mornings. Clara moved to Portugal to be near her sister. She takes long walks along the ocean. And every Friday, she calls Lena, who now volunteers at a shelter for girls who've been trafficked. They're building something real again. Sophie went back to school. Psychology. Trauma work. She told me once, I want to be the voice I needed when I was 15. And I believe her. Every word. And Jeremy? My son forgave me. Not all at once. But piece by piece. He teaches now. Literature and ethics. He says pain only defines us if we let it. And that forgiveness isn't weakness, it's survival. And me? I moved back to the little house in Maine. The one I'd left decades ago when I still believed Jonathan Harrington loved me. I sit on the porch most mornings now. Coffee. A blanket. Silence. And I remember Marisol. The woman who gave everything so we could breathe free. I plant a garden for her every spring. Only wildflowers. The kind that grow where they're not supposed to. The kind that survive. So if you're watching this, if you've ever been lied to, cheated, erased, remember this. We are never too old to rise. To rage. To reclaim. And when the smoke clears, we will still be standing. Because we are not broken. We are just getting started. If this story touched you, please like, comment, and subscribe to Twisted Tales and Truths. Tell us, have you ever discovered your husband's betrayal too late? Or worse, been forced to forgive what you could never forget? We want to hear your truth. Because someone out there needs it.